Hi, welcome to the One Flow podcast. I am Jaigopal Khalsa, and this is the One Flow, where everything comes from one creative conscious flow, and it's constantly flowing. That's what this podcast is about. And we have people on who are just doing their thing and flowing with their thing in life. And today we have Michael David Kerr, who's a friend of mine. He's an actor and a storyteller, and he's also a teacher. And I know him. He also goes sometimes by David Schermerhorn, but I know him by his Kundalini spiritual name, Hardial, because we met through Kundalini Yoga. But like I said, he's an actor, writer, producer. He also teaches the art of storytelling. And he's won multiple awards for his storytelling. He's won the Moth's Story Slam Award for solo storytelling a couple of times. He's written and performed a one-man show called Birthday, which I've seen, and it's excellent. It was most recently at the Hollywood Fringe Festival, where he won an Encore Award. And from there, he was invited to the Santa Monica Theater Festival. He produces and hosts a show called Shame on Sundays, which when I was reading this, David, I thought of a really awesome story from West Point. So I want to be on your show. This show is called Shame on Sundays, which I think is really awesome because it's storytellers get together and they share their best shame stories. Some story from their life where they experienced deep shame. I think that's awesome. And so he's had some renowned comedians that have performed in shame, such as Moses Storm, Moon Zappa, Beth Lapides, Jodie Comer, and Brian Finkelstein. I pronounced that right?
Brian Finkelstein, yeah. And the Jody, I have to figure out I think that's the wrong Jody that I put in there. I thought that was her name.
Well, somebody's getting credit.
Jody somebody, and I'll get her name on Instagram.
Okay, cool. Well, you put it up on the ticker.
Yeah.
But most importantly for you, he teaches workshops where students can go and take their painful experiences, life experiences, and then turn them into gold through storytelling. He's an amazing storyteller. I saw him in his one-man show, and it was absolutely wonderful. And we'll stick this up later on, but he'll be performing his 90-minute one-man show Birthday down in Baja, Mexico, at the Gertrude Perlman Theater, and that'll be on November 1st. So hopefully we'll air this before then. And so that to be cool. You can take a weekend, go down to Rosarita and go see an awesome show. And then also he's putting on another shame storytelling show, which will be in Long Beach, and that's on Sunday, November 20th in the afternoon, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. And that'll be we have that. It's up on the bottom, the link to go to that and all that. So, all right. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hardial. I don't know what to call you.
You could say Hardial from our spiritual.
Yeah, well, that some people could like that gets weird for like regular people who don't know anything about Kundalini Yoga.
Right.
Start, I remember I changed my name, actually changed it legally to Jaigopal Khalsa because I was all in.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Texas Hold'em, baby. I was all in on the Sikh. And I changed my name, and then one of my really good friends, who's now a general officer, he's a general in the Army Reserve. His comment was just like, "New name, huh?" Because it's just weird for people to have just change their own name, which is interesting because you have a couple of different names, and I think you have a challenge with that, with the with like who to go by. There's a little identity thing. So why don't we start with that? Like, so I didn't even know. Like, I had you as David Schermerhorn, and of course I know you through Kundalini as Hardial, right? Yeah. So, but I when you said Michael David Kerr, I was like, I didn't even know that name. And then you said that you have other aliases. So
I know it makes me sound like a sketchy person who's like trying to evade the law, but that's not what it is.
You know what? I think everybody in the arts deals with that. They name or a lot will do.
Well, trust me, I was just down in Mexico and I was doing a storytelling show, and so when I'm just out surfing or something, I just say David. But when I'm doing my storytelling stuff, because it's been this way for the last 10 years, I go under Michael David Carr, which is my middle name, Carr. And so it's just one of these weird woo-woo things that, like, we're just on this podcast. This is the first one, so you can cut it. But
I'm not
I
cutting
have
anything.
had
I mean, this is it. It's
such
in. It's in.
I've had such name identity things in my life. And this is going to sound so crazy, but it probably won't to someone like you who can relate because you've changed your name. But over my lifetime, I've probably had 100 different people, after I tell them my name is David, call me Michael. And I've
Just like
had
that.
this just like that. Like, I had an acting teacher who I went to 5 days a week for a year who could not call me David. He would, this is back when, in the day when I went to the neighborhood playhouse, when Meisner was there, and this, all these teachers. And this one guy, he was my main teacher, literally saw him 5 days a week. He would always say Michael. And then he'd go, why do I keep calling you Michael? Then years later, I had a yoga teacher I went to, who I'd been going to for years, would always call me Michael and always say, why do I keep calling you Michael? I know it sounds crazy, but I've met people who I meet who I just say, hi, I'm David. They walk away. 2 minutes later, they come back, they go, Michael. And they go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I keep calling you Michael.
That's
And
pretty
it's
cool.
almost like the name David was my father's name. It is my father's name, David. So I'm David Jr. And it never kind of felt like that sticks. When I tell people my name is David, they'll literally walk away a lot of times and they'll go, sorry, what's your name again? And then if I just go under Michael, no one ever asks twice.
Wow, that's
I
pretty
know,
wild.
I
So
know
you're
it's
Michael. Yeah.
so, but so that's why I kept the David in there, because that is my legal name. So I go under Michael David Carr, and Carr is my middle name. Skirmerhorn, my last name, is so long. It's 12 letters. It gets bastardized and butchered anytime anyone says it. So it's kind of hard to, that one's just too hard. Carr is
It's
three letters.
one man's opinion, but I something about David Schermerhorn I think has like character, and I like it. And
Yeah.
having accidents here. Well, we'll leave
Lights
that.
are falling from the sky too.
Backbiting. So I think that's pretty wild that people call you Michael anyway, even though you introduce yourself as David.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But the problem is, if you explain this to a normal person who's like, wait, what's your actual name? You know what I mean? It just sounds so woo-woo and crazy. Like, and so at this point, Michael David Carr is my storytelling name.
Michael David Carr. Cool. That's what it is. So we have Michael David Carr with us. So tell us a little bit about your background. So you started out as an actor, and then
I started as an actor. I was in New York during the time when Sanford Meisner was there and still alive, and that was one of the first teachers I had. The big kind of acting. He's a well-known acting teacher from people who know the Meisner technique. And at the time, he had cancer and he had a big hole in his throat, and he would smoke cigarettes, and the smoke would come out of the hole in his throat. And it was very intimidating, and you'd go and do, I don't know if you're familiar with the Meisner technique, but it's,
is it method acting?
It's like method, but it's a different version. Stanislavski, it's all kind of stems from there. There's, there's the Strasberg.
Describe it a little. What's the Meisner technique for those who don't know?
The Meisner technique is more your imagination. It's kind of what if, but again, it's coming from Stanislavski is the root of all of these. But the Meisner technique, the way that Sanford Meisner describes acting is, he says, acting is the art of living truthfully under given imaginary circumstances. And I think that's just a perfect definition if you think about it. It's living truthfully under given imaginary circumstances.
So it's pretty much like life. Yeah.
That's something that the character would do, and you would do, in real life if you were in this situation. So he uses a lot of kind of as if, it's think as if you're this character, think as if this really happened to you. Where someone like Lee Strasberg, his method is more, go inside, kind of get the sensory on a past memory that happened and then use that in your scene. Or Meisner's is more use your imagination. That would be the probably the biggest way I would see the difference. But they're all, again, coming from the same root, which is Stanislavski, which is really just be truthful.
That's the thing. I many years ago, I first started out, like when I was a young man. I started out doing some stand up. I believe it or not, I was actually funny when I was younger.
I do believe it.
I
You're funny when you're older.
into life. But I couldn't stand the whole club scene and all those people and that kind of stuff. So I had to get out of it. But I was very funny at one time, and I also enjoyed it quite a bit. But I studied improv acting, and the biggest mind blower to me was they called it the truth in comedy. And when I went to Improv Olympic West, and it was there, and that's long form improv as opposed to the Groundlings, which is short form improv. And what I found was so amazing. It's actually such an amazing spiritual practice when you think about what improv is, that you have to be in the moment, you have to really listen to the other person, and you're reacting to what they're saying, and you have to react truthfully. And the biggest thing I loved about the technique of improvisation is that the core of it is yes and you have to be, and so in order for something to be built, a scene to actually build, you have to say yes and then add something like give a gift. And they always talk about give your scene partner a gift. And I didn't realize it till much later until I got into this whole thing, but acting, particularly improv acting, it's a very spiritual practice. You have to be in the moment. You have to be connected and communicating very well to the other person, and you have to say yes. And Joseph Campbell has this thing. He says the warrior says yes, says yes to life, yay to it all, even the pain, right? So you got to say yes to the bad stuff to get to go forward. So that's what I love, and that's why I'm really happy to be talking to you today. You're an accomplished actor and writer. And I still do some writing and stuff like that, but it's just like it's a spiritual practice. Like the art is a spiritual practice, and people, I think, need to be reminded of that, because in today's world we're moving into that, but in yesterday's world it was Piscean, and it was religion is over here, and it's a hierarchy, and you're bad, religion's good, God's good, all that stuff. And people don't recognize that's what the one flow is about, that it's in everything. The one flow is in everything. So you're and acting, you're putting a frame around a piece of art, and that's God right there. So
you're so right at listening. That really was one of the biggest things with Meisner technique as well, and of course Strasberg. But Meisner was really, that's why he has you do, if you've ever seen, they've done it on many TV shows. It's so friggin' mainstream, where people are in an acting class and are like, you have a blue turban, and you would say, I have a blue turban. I'd say, yes, you have a blue turban. Yes, I have a blue turban. And you keep going with just that, going back and forth. That's called repetition. And the reason you're doing that is not about the words. He has you do that before you do a scene, so that it's not about the words that you're trying to manipulate or sound a certain way. You're just trying to you're in the moment with just this really simple back and forth with each other. You have a blue turban. Yes, I have a blue turban. And going back to it, it's exactly what you said. It's listening, and being in the moment, just as in the the Groundlings, or the what's the other one I took, the UCB, where it's yes and in a way I totally agree with you about spirituality, because you have to be selfless if you want to be really good and help your partner. You're going to be better, and they're going to be better if you're selfless and you're not trying to just hog the scene for yourself, or go on a monologue or something. And it's kind of like they give you something and you're like, yes. And this grocery store is amazing that they actually have people surfing in the aisles, and then I love the way that it builds and all that. But it will only do that if each of you guys are listening and kind of like playing volleyball, playing tennis.
That's a really great point. You can really go, if you were to break down all of the tenets of improv and really good acting, you'll find that it's all very, they're all can be likened to spiritual principles. Like that's a great example, that if you if you're looking to give instead of take, if you're looking to give to your scene partner, then the scene's going to be better. You're going to enjoy it more. You're going to look better. But everybody's mostly, especially new actors and experienced people, are so ego oriented and nervous, and so they're making all the mistakes, right? Like they're hogging the scene or doing all those things that you do to make mistakes. But it's giving, listening, giving, and letting the other person look good that actually comes back to you. There's so many spiritual things there. Like there's Yogi Bhajan says all the time, giving is God, taking is the devil, because, it's, if you get into the one flow and what that, neutral force of nature is, it's nature. It's constantly giving. You plant a garden, it gives you so much more than you planted one seed. And so giving is the way to kind of unlock a flow of life as well. So, and that's all right there in the arts, in the acting.
Yeah.
And there's another question I wanted to ask you, which, well, not necessarily a question, but it's interesting because you're talking about the Meisner technique and Strasberg, which blows my mind because that's Lee Strasberg there in The Godfather, right? He's he's a character. What's the character's name?
Was it Mo Green?
No,
Or
no,
not Mo Green. Sorry, he's the sort of
always makes
Florida
money
mob.
for his partners.
Right. He was so good. Yeah, I mean, he was
anyway, whatever his name is. But that's Lee Strasberg in that movie, which is amazing.
Yeah, and he just so you know, he's Al Pacino's teacher, and Al obviously got him the role.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's really. I can watch The Godfather pretty much like every day and never get sick of it.
Agreed.
And that's when. Well, let's put a pin in that one because I want to talk about. I want to talk about the quality of training and things like that, and like where we are right now in the world. But let's put a pin in that and come back to it. But when you talk about Meisner and Strasberg and these techniques and studying acting, I think that's so important for people to hear because the way the world has gone, like we have a YouTube, and I think they asked a bunch of kids, like tweens, like young kids.
Yeah.
And
what do you want to be when you grow up?
And what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be famous. I want to be I want to be famous on YouTube. There's nothing there, like I want to be a great actor. I want to be a great writer. I want to write the greatest novel that ever happened. These were aspirations, not so long ago in my lifetime. But that's with this whole kind of the way the world is gone and where we're at right now. There's this kind of it's missing, and these new kids don't. I sound like an old guy. These kids today, they don't even know what they're missing. But what I guess I'm trying to formulate a question here. What do you think of the state of art now, like that's being made, the state of movies and those sorts of things that are happening now? Like we have tons of channels. There's all kinds of they call it content.
I mean, there are some great things that are. I think by far better. For the most part, I think TV is better than film these days. Has more quality.
That's true.
You just have to find those things. Like that show Rami is one of my favorite shows. It's so incredible.
Rami,
Ramy, Rami. It's about this guy. He's a Muslim, but he's sort of, millennial. So he's sort of caught in between doing the more Western modern way and then kind of his family wanting to practice the old way of doing things, but it's just the guy in it is so friggin' good. He's this comedian, Rami. I can't think of his last name, but it's a show on Hulu and it's gone 3 seasons, but it just goes to these dark places that you just can't even believe that they're going there, but they do go there and they don't cut away on some of the scenes. I'll let you watch it for yourself, but Rami, that's an amazing show, and I think that's high quality, sort of dark comedy.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, and then there's another one that I really like on TV too on Netflix, the Never Have I Ever, which is about the girl. It's by Mindy Kaling. She executive produced it, and it's sort of about this Indian girl growing up in a high school in the
I
valley.
have seen.
But it's really I think it's got a lot of heart to it, and so does the show Rami. But overall, I would say the best things to me are the TV has the most quality, and then movies. I've seen maybe a couple movies in the last few years that have moved me. You know, I saw Peanut Butter Falcon, that one with Shia LaBeouf, and it was just so moving and so great. And then this other tiny little movie called Keep the Change, about an autistic guy, and he's dating a girl on the spectrum, and it's kind of their life. It was made for nothing, and they used real people, on the spectrum, and it was really great. But overall, I would say movies I don't like as much as TV. Movies, of course, I always, because I'm old, I'm gonna say the heyday was The Godfather, The Taxi Drivers, The Raging Bulls, The King of Comedy. All those are my favorite, character-driven kind of things. So if I see a movie these days that's character-driven, which is rare, um, something like Peanut Butter Falcon or Keep the Change, those are the movies I like, but they're not very, they don't stay in the theaters very long.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I do see that there is a lot of good quality stuff out there. I think a lot of it gets lost in the shuffle because you have to dig down to find it. I know there's probably a lot of good independent films. I know that I haven't seen any lately, but I know we were just recently in Mallorca, and on the flight, I could see there was so many foreign films, and I know just from watching a few trailers of them, there's a lot of really good ones. But I guess what I'm saying is I think in all this sort of media and calling it content, it's so fast and people don't edit or refine stuff. My concern is where it's going, and I guess things will always sort themselves out. You have some new kids coming in that are just geniuses, and by virtue of their own exploration and having everything available to them in the information age, they'll just go find things like The Godfather and Coppola and study that and just grok it and then start making amazing films. So it's probably just my own Piscean mind of being like, world has, and it's all crap.
Trust me, I get that too. I mean, if you really want to go into it, The Godfather, I'm sure wouldn't be made now because Marlon Brando isn't really Italian.
Oh, you're right. Oh, then they would consider it. What do they call that?
Polish.
Appropriation.
And James Caan is not Italian; he's Jewish.
Yeah, cultural appropriation. Let me just let me just go into that for a second. Cultural appropriation.
No, I don't even want.
No. Well, look, I just want to make this point, and for whoever cares, whatever. I don't know who needs this. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I did a whole rant on that. It's like, you're going to tell us anyway. Cultural appropriation is total BS because I lived in Greece when I was in the army, when I was a young man, and every place I've ever been I can have two living examples of this. I was in Greece and I made an attempt to learn the language. Of course, I was in my early 20s and I wanted to meet girls. So I was like, I'm going to learn the language, right? Sure. So, but we were looking for an apartment once, a bunch of army guys dressed in uniforms. We went out to this farm house, and these two old farmers, like literally living in a brick hut in Greece, that we tried to speak Greek to them. They were so delighted. They didn't care that we were Americans or that kind of stuff. And then everybody I ever came across in Greece, they considered it a compliment that I was trying to speak their language, that I enjoyed their culture. They were turned on by it. So cultural appropriation is another way to divide us. And then of course now I'm Sikh, right? I go to India, absolutely love that I'm a Sikh. I'm obviously American. They come rushing up to me, all want to take pictures with me. And so cultural appropriation is complete and utter bullshit. That's just how to put that out there, as is most of the woke stuff. Anyway, but let's get back to what we're talking about here. But no, you're right. Godfather, or these other movies with all this, well, we called it in the 90s PC, whatever that stands for.
Yeah, Brando would not have been allowed to.
But I guess what I really want to get at here is what I'd like to see now in today's world is somebody make a movie or a TV show that I can go back and watch every single day and not get sick of it. It's like that with certain movies. And I always ask myself, what is it about The Godfather? What is it about Chinatown? What is it about Network? What is it about those movies? We were just watching Eddie Murphy movie, even The Golden Child, or Coming to America. What is it about that you can go back and watch, I'm really lumping some not so classic movies in there, but there's certain
Yeah, no, I
movies.
know what you mean. I mean, in terms of The Godfather, you could turn that on any time, and it just is so, other than Godfather 3, of course, which is
There's
yeah,
something that Coppola was able to capture in that, and I want to know, like, what is that? Was it his aura? Everybody being excited to be on that film with him, and of course,
yeah.
there's all kinds of problems that happened at the time. There's stories about how the studio wanted to shut it down. He was always over budget, blah 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 blah.
But it is kind of funny. I agree with you in terms of the energy because Godfathers 1 and 2 are hands down in the top 5 American movies, and that's 1 and 2. 2 was just as good as 1 as far as I'm concerned. But when they did Godfather 3, Coppola didn't want to pay Duvall, who was a huge part of the cast and was amazing, and he ended up casting, what is his name? The guy was really tan all the time. He was known for his tan.
Oh, George Hamilton.
Is that who
George
it is? Yeah.
It was
He's the one
Dracula.
who's really tan, and he kind of looks like a car salesman.
Was it George Hamilton? I'll have to look it up.
Here, isn't that what they do on podcasts? They go, "Oh,
Yeah, well, I can do it here. I can't TV.
I'm pretty sure it's George Hamilton. So,
I don't remember in the movie like what character he played.
okay, well, who Robert Duvall played was the consigliere, right?
Yeah,
He was the sort of lawyer who was like, I don't remember exactly, but he was the adopted, basically,
that's his son.
son.
Yeah,
He was the wasp that they let in only because, and they only let him in up to a certain degree because he wasn't Italian, and that was part of it. That was kind of cool in the Godfather. So I'm looking. Yeah, it was George Hamilton. So anyway, the worst casting ever from somebody who's made some of my favorite movies, of course, being Apocalypse Now, and even Rumblefish is like in my top 10, and that's Coppola. But yeah, so I think probably despite Robert Duvall, because I can't think of any other reason you'd do it. Robert Duvall wanted money. Coppola wouldn't give it to him or whatever, didn't fight for him. As the story goes, he didn't get what he was asking. And so then Coppola recast that role with George Hamilton, who's, like I said, looks like a used car salesman and is not. Duvall is one of our greatest American actors. So the point being, it felt like that whole movie, Godfather 3, was the exact opposite of 1 and 2, where no one was excited to be in it. It was terrible. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty unwatchable.
it's
And
really wild though. I also never liked it, and it's something about it though. I don't know what, but I went back to it recently, and I've seen it a couple of times recently, and I actually there's something about it. It's nowhere near as good as the first couple,
oh
but
my
it's
god,
definitely good. Uh, it's still good.
we'll disagree on this one.
Yeah, you can totally disagree with me on that, and I agree that it's definitely a few steps down. But my question is, and this is not necessarily to you, this is to whoever's listening. If you're in the arts and all that kind of stuff, um, the question I want to ask is, what is it? What is it that makes a film like The Godfather and or certain actors like Robert Duvall, where you could, there's certain actors like Robert Duvall, Denzel Washington. I can watch them in anything, even if it's a shitty movie. I might have to turn it off if it's so bad. There's been some Denzel Washington things I just try to watch and I'm like, okay, this is too bad. I can't do this. But the guy, man, like Denzel Washington, he's got such a presence. He's got such a radiant body projection. It's just like I can watch everything that guy's in. I can watch everything Robert Duvall's in.
Yeah.
Pacino's fun to watch because he kind of overacts and everything. But like,
Well, not in The Godfathers 1 and 2, not in all of his early movies. I mean, but
yeah.
then yeah, what happened was he won percent of woman, as far as I'm concerned, and that was
Oh, I
you
know.
know
I've never seen that. And he's supposed to play like I was in the military at that time when he played. He's supposed to play a military colonel, and that was just like turned my stomach. I'm like, who
I
are
don't even remember what the story
you?
was, but I remember it was a very big performance. And then a lot of times I feel these actors, him, De Niro, these people who were my favorites, they sort of get applauded for one type of way of being, and then they almost become a caricature of themselves in the movies. where you feel De Niro's doing De Niro, Al Pacino's doing Pacino. But somebody like Duvall, he's one of the few that I feel has not done that. He's still truthful. He studied with Meisner, by the way. That was his teacher.
What's that?
Duvall, remember I brought up Sanford Meisner. The
Oh, yeah.
Duvall's teacher was Meisner.
Okay.
They, they were all, these guys studying, and I think it's probably the 70s, with these amazing teachers, and going back to what you said, the original question, which is, what do you think of the state of it? So I think, like I said, the state of it is some of these TV shows are better, really well written. They're more like the indie films, they're character driven. They're more like the indie films of the 70s. But I do agree with you that there's so many kids, and why wouldn't they, take the easy route? If you can just go on YouTube and get, 5 million viewers, and then all of a sudden get offered a TV show.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, go for the opportunity. But what I'm saying is that it's just, there's no depth to it, and there's no depth to that. Anyway, I'll be interested to see how it evolves. I bet you that at a certain point it'll go that way. But I ask that question now a lot. And I mean, you as a teacher, as you teach storytelling, I think that's an important thing. How do we get the quality back into cinema? How do we get the quality back into literature? And how do we make that something that people want? That's what. So we can move on from that, because we really want to talk about you. I want to really talk about you.
Well, I think the answer I just do want to follow up with that is, I think what people really are turned on by is the truth. If you're seeing the truth, like The Godfather,
True. Absolutely.
the truth. The Godfather might have been noir, kind of heightened look to it, but you felt, okay, I could believe these people. I mean, The Sopranos, the reason that blew everyone's mind is because you felt like you were sort of a fly on the wall watching. That was such a different way of writing, and and Breaking Bad and all of these shows. Like, when they do that, again, I'm bringing up more TV shows in the later world. In the early world, it was the 70s movies that felt truthful, like Taxi Driver and all of these that I feel people were drawn to because they felt true. And then something like later on, The Sopranos is more like, to me, what the 70s movies were, or Breaking Bad is what the 70s movies were, in a way. So, yeah, my feeling is, when you tap into the truth, whether it's your own little world that you're making about the chemistry teacher who's becomes a meth dealer, of course it got pretty fantastical towards the end. But at the very beginning, I did completely believe, okay, this is this teacher who kind of got himself into this situation because he's so desperate. And there was just something about it that resonates. So to me, when someone's telling a story, when I'm teaching storytelling to people, is don't try to be performative. Don't try to do anything. Just tell the truth of what happened. Tell your beginning, your middle, your end. Have those emotional beats that are there, that are truthful. And I feel that in everything. I mean, any music I'm drawn to, or movies or books, usually it's because it has that truth element, unless I want something total escapism, silly, which is a different thing, which I think there's a value to it now too, because there's life is so crazy.
I think that the answer is right here. It just dropped in. There's the question I was asking for is, what makes something so good and resonant? And I just remembered there's a teaching from Yogi Bhajan, a kundalini yoga teaching that Hajivan, he brings it out all the time. And it goes like this. It's that a lie is also your truth, but nature doesn't support it. So nature supports truth. So if something's truth, it's true, it's resonant. And of course, interpretations and perceptions makes it relative. But if something's true, all of nature supports it. So that's it. That's why The Godfather, because there's somehow they got to a truthful representation of that subject matter. The actors very truthful in their performances, and so the whole thing as a collective really resonates. And then that goes for a lot of stuff like Breaking Bad, like you said, which also I wanted to add, when you mentioned, the chemistry teacher with terminal lung cancer who wants to provide for his family. That's what my friend Travis Wright, who's a screenwriter, and he actually was instrumental in me going to study at UCLA screenwriting, which were a lot of aha moments about life and writing. But it comes down to, like he talked about in screenwriting, how when you start, what you want is an ordinary character or ordinary person and throw them into extraordinary circumstances. And that's the whole thing off. So that, I think that is that's the crux of why Breaking Bad was so good, is because they started with the most ordinary guy, a chemistry, high school chemistry.
He's so relatable. I mean, when he gets sort of beat up on at the car wash, or where or his kid gets around, like you totally relate to him. Then towards the end, when he's the kingpin, I mean that was something that had never been done in TV that I thought was brilliant, was that they turned him into the villain at the end.
There's a whole other side of this that I won't get into right now, like the violence in things, but that we'll put a pin in that. I think we should have a regular thing where we get together and talk about the arts and stuff like that. I think that
I mean, Salinger is my favorite, and those 9 short stories to me again feels so good because they feel I can believe these characters. Anything that Salinger's written, I believe.
Oh, I want to dive deep into Salinger. He was in the OSS, was the original intelligence service in World War II, and I have a whole bunch of theories about why Catcher in the Rye is with all the mind control and all that, and guys who end up being these crazy lone killers, all reading Catcher in the Rye. There's something I want to explore.
Oh, wow.
But we're going down other rabbit holes. I want to talk about you more. Okay, so let's get back to first of all your one-man show, Birthday. I saw it. It's absolutely amazing. I love how simple it was. You had your props. You were really like open, kind of breaking the fourth wall a little, talking to the audience and everything. But give us a little bit of background about Birthday, what it is,
sure,
how it came about, and what you're doing with it. You keep evolving it and you keep performing it and making it better. Go ahead.
Hopefully making it better. Sometimes you wonder if you're making it worse, but Birthday is a solo show I do. It's about 90 minutes now. And it came out of me. Well, I had done, storytelling with the Moth. I've been really involved with that, and then telling shorter stories at different storytelling events around LA. But Birthday really came out of an intense year that I had, super intense, where both parents died and then my house burned down all within a 1-year period. And when I tell people kind of the log line of this, they say, what's Birthday about? And if I say that, people are like, okay, I don't want to go to that. But the thing I have to add is that it's done 2 things. It's done with humor, because it had to have humor in it, telling this story of what happened over that year. And the second part is it's about coming out of the ashes, literal ashes, the house burning down and sort of everything that I had in my life going away. So the other part of it, it's called Birthday because I guess I'll just give it away, because my father dies on my birthday. My mother dies on her birthday, which is Christmas. And birthday has a huge significance for me. I never celebrated my birthday for many years, not just because I'm older and don't want to celebrate it, but meetings from the time I was in my 20s. It was always like, oh, when you become super successful and you've achieved A, B, and C, then you can celebrate your birthday. And I never did. And sort of when my dad died on my birthday, it made me start to celebrate, my life. He would celebrate his birthday. He was the opposite, celebrated himself, his life, everything in general. He was a Leo, so he would always shout from the rooftops when it was his birthday. Me, on the other hand, I would kind of hide, because I wouldn't want people to celebrate me. I wouldn't tell anyone, even good friends, even sometimes people I was dating, what the exact date of my birthday was, because I didn't want them to bring it up and acknowledge it. And by acknowledging my birthday, they're acknowledging me. So a lot of it has to do with kind of lack of self-confidence, letting it go, where you think you should be in life and celebrating yourself regardless. Like that's really one of the themes of it. And it truly is a love letter to my parents, both my mom and my dad, who were amazing parents and so supportive over all the years of anything artistic I did, from the acting to the filmmaking. And so it's a love letter to them as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that show, and I can't wait to see it again. It's interesting. I'll tell you the truth, since you're talking about truth all the time. I remember before I knew you.
Yeah.
We'll get into Kundalini yoga in a minute, but we are in a Kundalini yoga community in Los Angeles, and that's how we know each other. But I remember my wife, Jamila, saying that, "Oh, I'm going to this guy Hardial's one with Paige," and I was like, "Oh yeah,
I roll.
good luck, man," because in Los Angeles, everybody's doing something. It's kind of like that scene in The Big Lebowski where the nebbish landlord comes and asks the dude, "Hey, I'm doing my dance recital. Would you come to it?" Everybody's got something they're asking you to go to. And when I first got to Los Angeles, I mean, this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I was working at Disney at the time, and I was running around doing stand-up. And again, I'll just say I was funny back then. But times change. But
you still are.
My wife keeps telling me I need to do these crazy TikToks and stuff, and I'm like, but I'm a very high spiritual yoga teacher now. People are not going to buy me with that.
No, that they don't have it. See, they have all like the young kids trying to do it now.
I know. I actually have made a bunch of these crazy things. I just haven't showed them to the world. They're very funny. Anyway, I sound like an idiot talking like that, but what to say was that I had a super, coming out of the Army and all that, I had a super high standard because, like West Point, the Army and that kind of stuff. I was going to do something. It's like a super high standard. Sure. And so I was working at Disney, and I was working really hard on the stand-up, and I did very well, at the time. And I remember asking a bunch of coworkers, I was 26, 27 or something like that. And all these girls and guys that I worked with in the office and stuff like that, in production and all that. I asked them, I said, "Would you come out? I'm doing a show at the Comedy Store. Will you come out?" And I remember this one girl, Kathleen, I really kind of had a crush on her. And, and so I went there, and I was always super projective. I wanted to do really, really well. So I did the show, and then I'd come in Monday morning, and, I would talk to Kathleen on the phone all the time. And she goes, "That show was really good." And I go, "Oh, thanks. But you know what? Why do you sound so surprised?" And she was like, "Well, it's Los Angeles. Everybody's got some show or play they're doing, and almost all of them suck." I hate to say that, but so I was like, "Really?" I go, "If I knew I sucked, I wouldn't have invited you." So I don't know what that sounds like, but make me sound like a blowhard or whatever. But I just remember having this thing I'm trying really hard at this thing, and I want you to come out to it, And anyway, to say that my wife says I'm going to this one-man show, I was like, because I had been to some as well.
Oh yeah, trust me. If anybody's come see my solo show, I probably have a lot of the same reaction.
Right.
Mark Maron did a really funny thing on he had the Mark Maron show on IFC or whatever. And there was a guy who does a one-man show, like a yoga teacher or something, and he brings his rocking horse from his childhood. And it's just pure torture. And to me, they captured it so perfectly, because it's kind of everybody's fear that you're going to come out in some stocking and do a German expressionist thing of coming out of the womb and be completely tortured. So I do understand that. And
anyway, but I got to finish this because I sound like I'm beating you up.
I'm not yes-handing you. I'm being one of those people.
No. What I'm saying is that so my wife said she'd go into this thing, and then she comes home and she goes, "It was amazing." I go, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, no, he's amazing. It was so good. He's so talented." He goes, she goes, "I can't wait to see it again." And from that point, I couldn't wait to see it myself. And because, when you find something good, you really want to go check it out. Yeah. And it was it was a couple of years before you put it on again. And then I finally got to go at that Fringe Festival. We had just come back into town from something. And anyway, it was in June, right? Yeah, so I just come back.
I think so, yeah. Thank you, Jamila, by the way.
And so it was really, and Tage said the same thing. She said it was amazing. And so anyway, I really enjoyed it. And I think that's you know, one man shows are very rare to have like be so good. And you know, we talk about swimming to Cambodia and some of these other shows, and you know, there's been a few like on HBO and things like that. But when they're done well, man, a one man show is so masterful and so fun to watch. You know.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a big compliment. No, I have had quite a few people say, "Oh my God, I only went because I know you, and I'll have to see you again," and then say I missed your show, so I went. You know, and then they go, and it's a different experience. And you know, of course, I've had some shows go better than others, and you know, when you do it the right way, and all the catharsis happens on stage with you and the audience, there's nothing better. And then you know, there could be those off nights too.
You know, I'm going to be totally honest with you. Before I went to see it, somebody in the yoga community, I don't remember who it was, and I'm not.
No, I know. As our friend, you don't even bring that one up, because that one, it was a terrible night for me, and so that was the
Anyway,
worst.
so what I'm saying is that I was expecting one thing, right? I won't even say what it was, but I was expecting one thing, thinking it was okay because I know you. You know, she was worried that you were like really depressed or whatever, but that was part of the show. And so she told me, she's like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm freaked out because I think he's really might hurt himself or something." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll keep it in mind." And then I went to see the show, and I was like, and you had taken that part out a little bit, and I was disappointed because you talk about. Like that's the real stuff people need to hear and see, you know, like that. So anyway,
I had overcorrected
what it was, but I hope you put it back in because I think that's important for people nowadays. We're creating some mystery. People now got to go to see the show, but I think you should put it back in.
We can talk about it a little. It's about the depression issue. I definitely
depression and suicide stuff. But you know,
I have depression. I'm bipolar too, which I always joke is the less sexy cousin to bipolar 1. So bipolar 1 is the one that, you know, the actors win the Oscars for playing, where it's like the guy walks naked to Las Vegas and jumps off a building. And bipolar 2 is, it's a lot of ups and downs. It's not, and you do get the mania, but yeah. And what I say in the show, and that one, I was still processing stuff, which was a really good lesson for me. The show you were talking about that didn't go well, that went way too dark, way too hard, you know, was because I hadn't processed certain things, and I was processing them up there and kind of stuck in them. And there was a lot of stuff about depression and, you know, not wanting to be here and all of this stuff. But I joke that I would never, you know, off myself, I say, because sort of I've always believed since I was 20 years old, you know, this is many, many years ago, I've always believed in Eastern religion and the afterlife. And so, you know, like if you ask sort of a Buddhist monk, you're like, if I kill someone, will I be forgiven? And they're like, yes, if you really, you know, if you change, the Buddha will forgive you. And you're like, what if hypothetically I killed myself? And the Buddhist monk is just like, you're fucked. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like you will come back as a bug's asshole in your next lifetime, and then you have to come back like a million times more. So like that's one. And so when I talk about these things, I'm not up there on stage saying this is a cry for help or anything. I'm up there kind of expressing this stuff, because it's, you know, it can be up here, but it's like that's the beauty of, to me, performing and doing a show, that you kind of work through this, you know, and then at the end, I don't want to say what happens, but you know, a lot of that gets released. So
but this person, I treated them like legitimate, like they were concerned about you, and I said, no, you know, I just talked to him, and he's fine. And I was looking forward to actually seeing that material covered, because what occurred to me when she mentioned it, I go, this is the purpose of art, right? There's so many people that are depressed, and the suicide rates are up high. I think it's so important that you should talk about that and let people see the resolution, because that could be a huge relief valve for people. Like there could be somebody in that audience that was going to go home and kill themselves that night.
I've had people come up with depression after, people who've come up to me with depression after the show, and they're like, thank you so much for talking about this. And that, you know, I totally related to that. And that's like a dream scenario, because it does take the stigma away to talk about it. I always, No one said this joke, but I just feel like I want to put it somewhere where it's like someone kills themselves and everybody's like, oh my God, he always put explanation points after his text. I can't believe he killed himself.
That's pretty funny.
Like he
He
would
always
always
seems
put
so
three
happy.
explanation points after every text. Like how I had no idea that was coming.
It was always
So
happy emojis.
yeah, total happy emojis.
Okay, so we're going to keep moving on, but before we do, I want to put up the information about your show. You're doing Birthday Again down in Baja, Mexico,
Yes.
at the Gertrude Perlman Theater on November 1st.
Yeah.
Man, that's a
And
dream. I wish we're in New Mexico now, but we have some
oh, that
family.
would be
But
so fun.
man, I would love to come down there. But so for people who are interested, check it out. And then down below,
It's south of Baja. I mean, south of Ensenada, about 40 minutes. And anyway, if you look up Gertrude Perlman Theater,
yeah,
you can find it.
but you can look that up, and then you can also find you on Instagram. Where did
Birthday
that go?
Fringe.
Yeah, the ticker there. So Birthday Fringe. Yeah, at symbol Birthday Fringe on. I just sounded like a real old guy there. At symbol Birthday Fringe. He's
On the
Birthday
inter-
Fringe on Instagram. I got to start getting cooler.
on the interwebs.
Remington did a reading for me last May, and he was like. He's like, dude, all these things in your chart. You need to do the podcast. He's like, be a rock star. I'm saying shit like at Birthday Fringe. I got to work on it. So
It's okay. My son, who's 18, says to me, he goes in IRL sometimes, and that's the only thing that I actually know that I can feel hip. And I go, it's not in IRL, it's just IRL. And he's a Gen Zer, so. But I think the podcast.
I don't even know what that means. IRL. I don't know what that means.
I mean, I can see people kind of scrolling through Instagram, and then they see this guy with the beard and thing, and they're like, "That's interesting," And I think it's funny because to see you here, you're kind of you've got both going. I'm just commenting here.
Both going what?
Well, you kind of got the podcaster vibe with like the shirt and then you got the turban, so it's like less kind of yoga and more sort of like, I don't know if Mark Maron and Hari Jeevan had a baby or something.
I'm gonna leave that right there. I didn't plan any of this. The only thing was, it's weird. This whole thing came together. Even this, Jamil and I went out because we're at my mom's house in New Mexico. At this point, she's had emergency surgery and like 2 months been in the hospital, and so we had to actually move out here for a while to take care of her. Even though she's still in the hospital, eventually she's going to come home. But it's funny. We went out in Las Cruces. It was a wonderful place. We were just looking for a little desk that I could sit behind, and like the really nice Mexican distressed wood ones were like a couple $100. And I'm like, I'm not spending that just to have a desk. And then sure enough, there was this white thing that was a side table my mom had, and she had the chairs in the garage. Like everything just sort of worked out in our favor. And so in terms of this whole get up, I just make sure my turban looks good. And I got to make sure Jamila doesn't look at me like, what are you, a homeless Santa Claus? What the frick did you
have to teach me to tie a turban the right way. Cause when I do it, it's always like somebody was, injured. But yeah,
on the inside track, like sometimes I forget, like I'll get up in the morning, I'll do my sadhana, I'll have like a house turban on, and it looks like shit. It's just some kind of like literally rag on my head, and I'll forget. And Jimmy's like, "Oh, we got to go to the store," and I'll get in the car and we'll be driving. And I'll catch myself in the rearview mirror, and I'm like, "Jesus Christ, Jamil, I look like a freaking homeless Santa Claus, homeless guy." Why don't you got your job? Your job is to make me look good going out. I mean, you're supposed to go, hey, clean up your shit here, man.
Yes, to help your projection, right?
I'm like, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she still doesn't know. I was like, I guess I have to take responsibility for myself and the way I look.
Anyway. I like it. I like the whole podcast vibe. It definitely, honestly, it feels totally different because when I see you, it's usually we're in white or you're in white.
I used to worry. Okay, so I used to worry that, like, I fell in love with Kundalini yoga. We'll get into the Kundalini yoga stuff in a minute. I want to cover your storytelling and shame before we go into the Kundalini yoga, or maybe we'll come back to it. I don't know, but I got really into Kundalini yoga. I just flipped out. It was such an amazing technology that I started teaching right away. And, so I was always running around dressed in white and that kind of stuff. But, I just, in today's world, I am a teacher. I used to worry that people would look at me if I dressed like this and, and be like, oh, that guy's not a teacher or whatever. But, we're in this Aquarian age and you have to express yourself exactly as you are. And, right or wrong, this is me here and now, and I'm still going to teach Kundalini yoga classes, and whatever comes through on that comes through on that. If
I
people
totally like it. I was giving you a compliment on that. It's like you're
no,
like,
I'm not taking it in a bad way.
yeah.
I just like the stuff about your name. I'm expressing this. Like I had a little block about being seen this way, dressing like this or whatever, because I'm a teacher. I have to uphold this kind of thing. I kind of think that's an old way of thinking, although the white bana is a symbol, and it absolutely, when I walk out of the house with that on, like especially like here in New Mexico, I have people call me Papa, like I'm a priest,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that sounds weird, like I'm not, but it's a symbol. And Yogi Bhajan talking about that extensively, and that even the whole where the word bana comes from, it comes from the Sikh gurus, it comes from Guru Gobind Singh. There's a certain way of dressing as a Sikh. From Guru Gobind Singh, and it's supposed to be a symbol so that people look at you and go, wait, what's this guy? Because it's supposed to be a symbol of becoming pure, purifying your mind, becoming pure as a human being, and doing good for others, and working hard, sharing yourself. It's supposed to be a symbol like that. So you're supposed to stand out. Yogi Bhajan said that all the time. Yeah. And so you're supposed to stand out. And Tate talks about, like, she's mentioned that a few times, where she's like, well, what do you think if I like came out and I was wearing like no turban, and I was wearing those other clothes, and I was smoking a cigarette or something like that? You wouldn't look at me the same. But I think it's different for each teacher. She's such a kind of high teacher and from a different era that, like,
well, you're also not going to go teach a class in that. You're going to teach a
class
in your body. But it's just interesting to me, because this is like a new part of you that I'm seeing. And
right.
So,
you only see me in class pretty much, or at my house when I'm after class, or if teaching or something like that. Yeah, that's exactly my point. Is like, for right or wrong, I'm just expressing me. I mean, my teacher, Haji even said to me, he's like, in the beginning days, he's like, you take the turban off, you put it back on, you're a Sikh, and that's why, you're bouncing back in this duality and stuff like that. But I don't think this is duality. This is just another,
I think it's the opposite of duality. Actually, I think it's integration. That's what it feels like. That you're not like, I'm this or this. You're like, I'm this. You're. I find that with spiritual stuff as well, because there was a certain point when I was 20 years old. That was how I got on this path, was actually through acting. My acting teacher, my main acting teacher above Sanford Meisner, was a woman named Sandra Seacat. And she's a very famous teacher. She's, was Mickey Rourke's teacher when he was the prime Mickey Rourke. She was Jessica Lange. I mean, she's coached everybody you could ever imagine. And she was a game changer. I met her when I was 20 years old. I was suicidal, actually, at the time. And I had gone to the neighborhood playhouse, and I was beating myself up because I felt like I wasn't doing it right. And I just was in this kind of crazy mode of really beating myself up a lot. And I was running around the neighborhood playhouse, and I jumped in the air, kind of chasing this, this other 20-year-old girl who I was kind of in love with. And we were literally running around, with so much energy, and it was just that crazy energy. And I jumped in the air, and I went, "Jate," like that. And I hit my head and cracked my head open. This was in the neighborhood playhouse. And so the paramedics show up, and I've got like blood coming out of my head. And it was like karmically, I was going through a huge shift. I didn't even know it at the time. Well, then I met that woman, Sandra Seacat, like a week later. And I had seen pictures of this Indian guru around the city. I didn't even know what the third eye was at that time, okay? And so Sandra, this acting teacher who I wanted to study with, we had this meeting, And we just started talking, and I just was like, wow, this is totally my teacher. She's incredible. And then I told her about the neighborhood playhouse, and I said, I think I'm too introverted when I'm acting. And she's like, why is that a bad thing? And just, it was just so different than the neighborhood playhouse, which was just, you have to be a certain way or it's wrong. And I saw a picture of that Indian guru in Sandra's house, who I had seen in a couple restaurants in New York, just coincidentally. I didn't know anything about her. And I said to Sandra, I said, oh, does that woman own that restaurant down the street? I saw her picture in the restaurant. And she started laughing. She goes, no, she's a guru. I didn't even know what a guru was. I thought she was just an Indian woman with a dot. And so this is Muktananda's, she was under the Muktananda lineage, and this was Guru Mai. And so Sandra said, do you want to come meet her? And I was like, yeah. And she explained what she was. And in my mind, I was 20 years old at the time, and I was totally open-minded. She said she's a spiritual teacher. And, I'm sure a lot of people have read the Eat, Pray, Love, that's the woman's guru in that. And so at 20 years old, I went into this hall in Manhattan, and she walked in. It was a hall with probably 1,000 people there. And I'm not kidding you, like as sure as we're both sitting here, when she walked out, a beam of light was coming out of her forehead. And right here. And I didn't know about third eyes. I didn't know about Shakti. I didn't know about any of that. And every time she would turn, this beam of light would come out. And it was as real as if there was like a flashlight going out there. And I just, in my mind, I just said, oh my God, this woman, I guess she just has light coming out of her head like all the time. I did not realize I was having a total spiritual experience. I was getting Shaktipat at the time. That never happened since, ever. But that was, you don't realize what's happening when it's happening. But my point being, that was like a total karmic shift for me, meeting Sandra, letting go of kind of like so much depression, self-hatred, all of that stuff. And then I would ended up living in an ashram, going to India, it completely changed my life. And the thing with this woman, Sandra Seacat, that she teaches is that anytime you're acting in a part, this is a part of yourself that you're working out in your psyche. It's like a waking dream. So if you're playing a killer or in the thing, that can be like your shadow side that you're working out, but your shadow side is trying to kill another part inside of yourself. Or if you're in love with a woman in the script, like that can be your heart, that can be your anima, your female part that you're trying to connect with, the male part. And so that was like a whole fascinating other world that she opened me up to. And I still to this day do. Dream work is a huge, huge part of a lot of stuff we've never even talked about. We can talk about on another podcast, but that's a huge thing that I do for creativity. And I don't know how I got off on that tangent.
No, perfect. 'Cause I what I love is you just described your is a destiny moment.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but when you said that you cracked your head open, that is almost like precipitated the meeting of that spiritual guru. Those moments are definitely, those are calculated moments. And when you get on a spiritual path, you start studying those things. There, you realize that those things are all programmed in.
1,000%. It was almost like a karmic thing that had to happen right before meeting her. And even the week that happened, right after I cracked my head open, we had to read a poem in the acting class in the neighborhood playhouse, where I told you where Meisner was the one who ran the whole thing. But we had to read a poem, and I just picked the prayer, St. Francis of Assisi prayer, the prayer of St. Francis, which it just happened randomly. I don't know how I stumbled on it. I'd never even read it before. But where there is hate, let me sow love, like that one. And as I read it in the class, I just started crying, and people were crying in the class. They were like, that was like the beginning of a huge of all this kind of. There's so much truth in all of that. I guess that's what it was, and that was the beginning of this trajectory. But you're right. I agree 1,000%. That was a destiny moment. Yeah.
And you had another destiny moment getting into Kundalini yoga. uh, like that. You want to talk about that for a second? Well, I mean, let's just talk
Sure.
about. We'll come back to shame because I'm actually very interested in that. I want to know.
Oh yeah. Well, but I will tell you the Kundalini thing. I mean, we can go back to it, but that is absolutely a destiny moment, no question. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about shame? Up to you.
Yeah, let's stay on the flow of this. So you got let's go. So how did you get into Kundalini yoga?
So Kundalini, I had been, like I said, from the time I was 20, I was very into, Gurmai, Baba Muktananda, Badi Baba, like all of those were my main teachers. And so Eastern religion, I had been into it since I was 20. But somehow with the Kundalini, hadn't, I had almost connected with the Yogi Bhajan. I don't know if I told you this story, but I had a crazy thing where I was at the Golden Temple restaurant in on Fairfax, and there was all these Sikhs there, and I always vibed with the Sikhs, and I liked the restaurant. And one of the young Sikhs who was in his 20s at the time, and I was in my 20s, we started talking. I said, "Can you show me something?" And he got on the ground and he showed me the breath of fire, just lifting up the legs and
Stretch.
doing that.
Yeah,
What's that?
stretch pose.
Yeah, stretch pose. So he did that, and then I started doing it. And then this man walked out, and he was like a middle-aged man, and he looked and he said, "He does it better than you," meaning I do it better than he does. And the guy like got up and he said, "Oh, yes, sir," and then the guy started talking to him and said something else and just like walked away.
That was Yogi Bhajan.
It was Yogi Bhajan.
So you did meet him. You met him.
And I did meet him.
Yeah.
And so then the guy goes, "You gotta come meet my teacher." He was like so insistent. I said, "No, I already have a guru." I was really adamant, because you can't switch gurus. It was like, I wish I hadn't been so dogmatic, of course.
No, actually, you're right on that. Like that's, people have a path, but anyway.
I know, but anyway,
a
and
lot of people make.
the young guy was really trying to get me to go. I said I would love to, but I just can't. And so that was, that was it.
Maybe getting darshan and meeting somebody doesn't mean you have to change the paths. Yeah.
Yeah. And so years later, I never really knew about Kundalini yoga. Wasn't, maybe I'd taken 1 or 2 classes, but I didn't know what it was truly. And so I was going through a big depression in life, and these things go up and down. And this was a huge one that was over me. And I just said, I got to go on a road trip somewhere and just find myself again. And as my son knows the story of Hanuman, my son Max was 8 years old at the time, and I told him, the story of Hanuman, his heart is ripped open. Well, in that story in the Ramayana, the reason his heart is ripped open, and he has a picture of Sita and Ram inside of his heart, and I'm sure you've seen that picture before. And the story behind that, briefly, is that Hanuman helps Rama get Sita, and wins the war against the sort of demons, and so Rama tries to give him all this this gold bracelet and with all these jewels in it. And so Hanuman takes the jewels and he starts breaking the jewels out, and he's biting the jewels and like throwing them on the guy, and he doesn't care about the jewels. And so everybody's like, "What are you doing?" He just gave you, Rama just gave you these jewels. Like, why are you doing that? And he goes, "There's no Ram there. I don't see any Ram here." He's just all bhakti, all like the love of the Lord. And so he rips open his heart, and inside of his heart is Sita and Ram, and it goes Ram, Ram, Ram. And so my son, who's grown up around this stuff his whole life, Max, he's 8 years old at the time. Well, one thing he says to me, he goes, "If you ripped my heart open, it would say, Dada, Dada, Dada."
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That gets you right there. Did you just fall out?
Oh, yeah. I was just like, what? Just like, I had to, I mean, that killed me. And so he drew me a little picture of, his heart open with like, Dada, Dada, awesome. Dada, my favorite thing ever. But right before the road trip I was going on, my son Max said to me, he goes, "I'm really vibing Hanuman for you," who's 8 at the time. I go, "What? Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm just really vibing Hanuman for you." So I go, "Okay, cool." And I really thought about that. So on my trip, I just didn't know where I was going to go. I kind of went to Arizona and, you know, ended up in like New Mexico. And then when I was in New Mexico, it was pouring rain and I pulled into a hotel. It was like torrential rains. And in the hotel, there was a picture of Hanuman. And it was a Indian couple that owned the hotel. And I said, "Oh, Hanuman, my son's been feeling, Hanuman for me." And he goes, "Oh, you should go here. You should go here." And it was the Hanuman temple in New Mexico, in Taos, New Mexico. And it was only because my son had said, "I'm vibing Hanuman for you." And I ended up going to that Neem Karoli Baba temple.
Karoli Baba.
Yeah, which is all Hanuman, which is all bhakti, love, all of that. And when I was there, someone said, "Oh, you should go down. The Sikhs are doing this thing that's a peace prayer day, down the road." So it's about an hour away. And so I went to it and I felt so much energy there. And then they said, I was like blown away. It was so powerful. Even the rituals that they had of just kind of like walking the grounds barefoot, and you could just feel the energy in that place. And then they said, "We're doing this summer solstice. We're doing the white tantric yoga." And I was like, I don't even know what it is, but I am going. I am totally going. And so I had so much energy. It was the next morning. So somebody said, "You have to wear a turban." And I didn't know anything. So I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know how to put a turban on." So I had somebody at the Neem Karoli put a turban on me that night, because I just slept in it, because I didn't know that you could actually put it on the next day. And that night I had so much energy, I could not go to sleep. I just pouring out of me. And I showed up at the White Tantric Yoga there, at the solstice, celebration. And I was trying to check in, and I'm not kidding you, it took them 2.5 hours. There was something, the computer kept breaking. My name would go the wrong, you know what I mean? It was just like one thing. And I was super calm, because I just was like, this is all supposed to be happening. And right when I showed up, they said, "You need to get it seated right now." And I just ran. I didn't know anything what White Tantric was. And I sat down and I said, "Hi, my name." And she goes, "Just put your arms out." Like I couldn't even get my name out. So I put my arms out with my partner, and we do the thing where you're looking in each other's eyes and you're just starting mantras. And it was just rocked me. It was so powerful. Life-changing, and that was how I got on this path. But it was all because my son said,
What year was that?
That was like 10 years ago.
10 years ago. So like 2012-ish.
Yeah.
Right around that big change. Just to clarify for the audience, what Michael was talking about is there's every year, it's as soon as COVID happened, this thing went away, and we haven't done it since. But every year since the 70s, they outside of Espanola, New Mexico, which is north of Santa Fe and south of Taos, there's a big piece of Hopi Indian land that was given to Yogi Bhajan in the 70s. And since that time, every year they would have, on the summer solstice, we'd have a whole celebration, which would include Kundalini Yoga, Peace Prayer Day, and White Tantric Yoga, 3 days of White Tantric Yoga. So what Michael is describing is that he went, because his son said this, he ended up in Taos. There happened to be a Hanuman temple there, which was a part of the Neem Karoli Baba lineage. And I've been to that one too. It's absolutely amazing. It's really, really, there's a lot going on inside there. Yeah. And very activated. And so then from there, he ended up going to Peace Prayer Day, because that's what Joseph Campbell talks about. That he says, like, when you're on the beam, he calls it being on the beam. You're in these destiny moments. If you sort of follow them instead of logicking your way out of them, they lead you exactly where you need to go. And that's, when they talk about in spirituality how it's supposed to just be easy, not easy meaning you got to do the whole house cleaning, but in other words, the flowing with the path, the doors open for you. That's what they mean by, how to describe it. Yogi Bhajan, I came across this teaching recently where he said that he goes, if you're out going after stuff, you won't be there when when the thing you're supposed to have shows up for you, because it's looking for you. but if you're out hustling, trying to do everything, you're not going to be there when the thing you need comes, because it's coming for you. And so that's what you're describing is these destiny moments, being on the beam. And that's, and most of us are taught in the K through 12 and college and all that to think so damn much that nobody's taught to intuit and just kind of sit there and wait for stuff to come. And that gets confusing because you've been taught to think all the time and do all the time. First of all, don't know how to just be yourself and just kind of be there and wait for these things to come. But it's also confusing, and I've had my problems with this, with the Piscean age. It's like, what do you mean don't do anything? What are you, some kind of, slacker ass, lazy person? Of course you have to do stuff. Yeah, what you do is you first of all, do your practice and meditation in the morning, do your exercise so that your body, mind, and soul is booming and beaming, and those things electromagnetically are attracted to you, so you can pull these things in. Doesn't mean you don't do anything. It doesn't mean apathy. It means you make the alignment, and then you develop your intuitive self so that you can have a self-sensory system, which then pulls down the clues that you need, and those things where somebody shows up and says, oh, hey, Peace Prayer Day down the road, you're here, and then the next door opens up. So
yeah,
anyway,
no, that's a great, you're not in, well, I was not at that time. I was not in my ego or my mind. I was in my heart very much and open, like one of my favorite quotes that Baba Muktananda said was, he said, for a bird to fly, like think of a bird and one wing is, grace, and the other wing is effort, self-effort. And so if the bird's going to fly, it can't all rely on one thing. So if it's all self-effort flying, then the bird, and there's no grace, the bird is going to, be off. If you're just hanging out with the grace and you're just going, oh, the grace will just do it, then that's out of balance. But if it's self-effort is one wing and grace is the other wing, then the bird flies. And I feel like that's very much what you're talking about, is that you do the self-effort. You get up in the morning. Like I definitely do my practices every day. The only time I haven't done it once in the last many years, it felt like I was stepping on a rake all day. And I learned from that. And I was like, no. So of course I have bumpy days, but I have to do the self-effort part, and I feel by doing that, I feel like then it invites the grace.
Yeah, and there's a favorite story I have that it illustrates this thing we're talking about, the what you got to do and what you got to wait for. But there's this guy who he really wants to win the lotto. He really wants to win the lottery, and so he's devout, and every day he prays to God, please let me win the lottery. All I want in life is just want to win the lottery. Please let me win the lottery. Let me win the lottery. Let me win the lottery. His whole life goes by and he doesn't win the lottery. And so he gets up to heaven and he meets God, and he says, I'm really pissed at you. I was devoted. I prayed every day. I prayed all day. All I asked you was for one freaking thing, and I just wanted to win the lottery, and you didn't deliver that. So what's up? And God said, hey, you freaking idiot. You could have met me halfway and bought a freaking lottery ticket.
That's right.
So you gotta do something, right? You want to win the lottery, you got to buy a lottery ticket. You can't just dream about it. But that's the challenge. It's got to be, I guess, different for everybody.
Yeah.
But so we covered Kundalini Yoga a little bit. While we're on Kundalini Yoga, another thing I want to ask you is has Kundalini Yoga helped you as an artist? And if so, how? And, describe Kundalini Yoga and what it's done for you. I'm kind of leading because I know it's helped you, but has it helped you? And if it has helped you, how has that worked?
Oh yeah, no, it's helped me enormously. I mean, it's helped me. I still do have depression bouts, but by far Kundalini is one of the things that's helped the most with it, because by doing these practices, I do Kriya for elevation every morning, and I feel like that's that's something to where it feels like the outside world does not affect me nearly as much as it does if I hadn't done it. Like it makes my field stronger. So that is huge to me. and also in terms of like the protection mantras, I always do the Adgadaname, Jagadgadaname, Satgadaname, Siddhagurudeva. I do that 3 minutes a day, just imagining that protection being around me, my family, my loved ones. Um, and there's something about it that just kind of, with my mind, that can obsess about things, that lets me let go of that and kind of trust there's like a protection around us more. Um, so that's a huge thing for kind of bringing anxiety down. And then in terms of just being an artist, uh, doing these practices, I will always do extra before I do the solo show, because the solo show, I'm performing in front of people, I'm opening myself up. Um, there's just something about it to start my day like that. It's like this anchor and saying that it gives me armor is the wrong word, but it's more like it gives me like a protective um, coat. I feel like when I go out into the world, energetically. I know that sounds really like woo woo, but, and then there's just so many things about Kundalini that I love in terms of what you're going through, different things that you're going through. There could be 1,000 different meditations that you can go work on. And so if you have anger, as I do fists of anger every morning. I do 3 minutes of these. And I've really noticed, of course, I can still get pissed off when someone cuts in front of me and, all of these things. But I have so much more patience with my son, you know, if I do my fists of anger, and I always do them, first thing in the morning. But if I don't do those, if I forget for some reason to do those, I really do notice a difference. So to me, I feel like Kundalini, there's so many benefits to it, but one of the things is being more less reactive and more responding. That's the best way I would put it, when I feel like I'm really in my practices and doing them, each morning for long enough. One other practice also that I love to do is to read from the Siri Grant, the long version of that book, the Guru. Um, and that's something that I'll do before I go out and even do birthday. I'll read 20 pages or 40 pages out of that, because going back to truth, I feel like that has so much. It is like divinely written, and it has the truths from so many different um, faiths, that are all in this book. And so it's like this consciousness vibration. So that's also another practice that I do in addition to the Kundalini, which all came out of being sort of seeing this world, the world of the Gurdwaras and the Sikhs and stuff, and so that's another one as well.
What Mike's describing is that there's the Sikhs, the last Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, took the writings of the previous 9 gurus, and also other realized or enlightened masters around that time. There were some Sufi saints and Hindu saints that I think he put in there, and so there's like Ravi Das and Kabir. So it's not all just Sikhs, but he compiled this book, and it's the writings of many enlightened beings, and the idea being that this became, in this digital age, the living guru, meaning that it's a book that you can read from, and then when you read from it, your neuron pattern becomes the same, because your mouth is moving the same way as that enlightened being. You're saying the same words that those beings wrote and uttered, and then you create the same neuron pattern, meaning that you can match that level of frequency and intelligence, and also just being masterful. So that's the idea behind it. So the Guru Gobind Singh wrote the book, compiled the book, and it's actually gets very interesting, because it's written where there's actually kind of like streets and houses and things like that. So when you explore it, it's actually like a book that's like it's created like a mandala. So there's different structures in there that that create really deep patterns in your mind for those who explore it very, very deeply. But that's at the core of the Sikh religion, if you want to call it a religion. I call it a technology, but that book is at the core of the Sikh path, and it's a very common practice that book is read from every day in whatever service they have, Gurdwara, and you can also go and you can read from it on your own. Anyway, big explanation, but that's what Mike was saying, is how part of what he does is he'll go read 20 pages from that book before he goes on stage.
It's like a
So,
prayer.
but
It really is a prayer, to me. And you do go into a different. It just I don't know what it is, but there's something kind of magical, some sort of alchemy that happens.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
it is. And one of the common practices, it's called taking a hookum, where you take the book. There's ones there's where it's one entire book, and then there's others where it's volumes. Um, and I've been trying to remember the exact number of pages, but I'm not going to say it because I can't remember the number. It's like 1130 pages or something like that. I should know
it's
all this,
more.
but
But I.
but anyway, what you can do is take a hookum. So you ask a question, and then you open it to a random page, and you start reading. And then there's definite sections. So you go from one section to the other when that section's over, and that becomes your answer. It's absolutely uncanny how the answer comes through when you do that. That's called taking a hookum. But this, these things like the writings of sages have a vibration to them. They exist. It's a structure. It's literally like a mandala. Words are symbols, and so you can arrange them just like you would uh, a Tibetan tanka or a piece of art that has spiritual significance. My wife, that's at the core of what she does as an artist. She makes these collages that are symbolically significant and puts them on yoga mats and pillows, so that when you're practicing, you don't even know, but symbolically you're looking at these archetypal symbols, and it's taking you deeper into a meditative state. And I think they said something like a symbol, an archetypal symbol, will move the subconscious mind something like 12,000 times faster than just a regular word or speech, or something like that. Anyway, so I'd like to. So Kundalini Yoga's helped you.
It's helped enormously. I mean, if I go to a Tej class, like I never don't feel better. You know what I mean? I'm gonna walk out there, my vibration is raised, and I teach Kundalini too occasionally in Mexico, where I am part time, and that even that's amazing because I'm getting to share this thing that helps me. I mean, the thing I love about it is that really it's not just one way for one person. There are so many choices. You're like, if I'm dealing with heartbreak, I can do the Ramadasa. If I'm dealing with anger, I can do the fists of anger. If I'm dealing with prosperity, I can do the Har meditations. It's so practical. And I feel that was the other thing, is I felt such a connection to Yogi Bhajan when I first did this too. When I did the Peace Prayer Day and all of that, I know it sounds crazy, but I could literally hear his voice almost like yelling at me to go and do something. As funny as that sounds.
Yeah, it's not crazy at all.
Yeah.
So mostly you're saying that Kundalini Yoga has taken away. It's given you a way to expand yourself, so that you feel less of the bad feelings, and you could focus more on the art. Would you say?
I would definitely say yes. It's like an anchor to start the day with, an energetic anchor in the best possible way of the word. So that I don't feel, a lot of times I can feel overwhelmed by the world. The energy of the world. Just things feel so intense, but there's something about starting the day with doing the Kundalini practices that I do every day, that it's just sort of, the best way is like it's like a buffer between the kind of crazy energy and you, and it's like this nice buffer. So yeah, I mean, and in terms of the depression stuff, like I said, I still do deal with it, but 100% the Kundalini, that's probably been one of the greatest helps I've had for the depression of anything. And it really has made a huge difference. So.
Yeah, I agree. Like kundalini yoga has changed my life in so many ways that it's. I mean, I could go on and on and on about it. But what I'd like to go into before we finish up here is you teach storytelling. Now you're a writer. You're a successful screenwriter. You've had stuff produced. You're a successful actor.
I'm going to cut you. Well, I wouldn't say super successful. I always joke that I'm the guy who had just enough water in the desert to keep going. So I
think I want to stop you, man. I consider you to be extremely successful. When I look at you, I saw your show. I see that you've written. We've talked about stuff. I had written a short story, and after we were hanging out and talking a bunch, I said, "Will you read this short story?" And you gave me tremendous notes and your insight into writing and character, and that. I've been bouncing around the writing world for 20 years and stuff, and more. And your notes were spot on. I've met a lot of writers that I've gotten notes from, and you're one of the top people that ever gave me notes on a story or something like that. And I got to be honest with you, I think you shouldn't cut yourself down like that. I think you're very successful.
Well, I appreciate it. See, I got to do more. I've got to do more practices here.
Yeah, but those things, that's the great thing about it. That kind of thought form can just go in a second.
Yeah.
I've had those recently because we be honest, this whole thing with my mom has been a very tough time for my wife and I. We had to move out of our house and come out here and so on. So it's been a challenge, but those challenges are really, really gifts in a lot of way. And the stakes were upped, and when I could catch my teacher's classes either online or when we were in Los Angeles, there was one class where he said, you can get rid of one thought form and just instantly. We did that one class and something cracked wide open, and there was a sort of thought that was sort of blocking me, and it just went away in a second. So you can absolutely get rid of that.
And you're helping her for sure. I mean, there's zero question. All the practices that both you guys are doing, I can relate. I know what it's like to be helping a parent that's dealing with health issues.
Well, that's at the core. That's part of what your birthday show is about.
Absolutely, it's a huge part.
But we have to save it for another podcast. I talked to you about this. You called like a couple of days ago to say, "Hey, how you doing?" Which is very nice. And I said I had this kind of big epiphany. I just want to share this with the audience. I had a big epiphany when I was meditating. I could totally see how, because you get into this thing and there's mixed feelings. So my mom, she had these problems and stuff like that. And it's not all, oh my God, she has the problems. You get angry at your parents. I get angry, like she's making me move out here because she didn't take care of her body. And we told her, take care of yourself. You're having this problem, that kind of stuff. But all of a sudden during meditation, it became very, very clear. And my wife had said this to me, but it was much clearer when it came through me in my meditation, which was my mom's actually given me a huge gift, because she's actually suffering with all of this pain and stuff like that. But it's forcing me to grow and get, and hit new heights, despite the work that I have to do, the this, the that my wife and I have to do, and, me, right? But to have to change my life and to come out here, to have more compassion, to have to make the adjustments, and knowing that there's this one flow, this force that's actually guiding you the whole way. It's actually taking care of stuff, God's got you covered, that kind of stuff. Just to know that that's going on. This whole thing, her sacrifice going through that pain this is on the soul level, right? It's on a higher level, but her sacrifice on that soul level has actually been a huge gift to me. And that shifted a whole big thing. That one morning when I realized that, I was like, oh, this play that we're all kind of acting in together, she's in a lot of pain, but she's still alive in that pain. And I have to make adjustments. I have to get better. My wife has to get better. We all have to get better through this shared experience. And I don't know if that's coming through or will come through the audience, but it was a huge aha moment. And it's a complete shift of perspective to be like, she's actually making a sacrifice. She's not, just having these problems that's causing me problems. It's the other side of the coin, is that this is huge. It's a huge gift, and she's actually suffering to give that gift. Put it that way. Anyway,
you're
but I want
doing your dharmic Duty too. I mean, I strongly feel that, I helped with my parents. My mom had Alzheimer's. I would go up there. She lived up north. I would drive up to Marin, every month or so and be with her for a week and help, and I feel like that's so much, that's our dharmic, you know, commitment. I mean, your mom was probably a great mom to you. My parents were amazing parents to me, and I feel that it is. It's just gonna, like, I hear what you're saying. It's building your character.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But speaking of building characters, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this show that you do. Now, you're a two-time award winner of The Moth, which I think is a tremendous show. For people who don't know it, it's a really great storytelling venue,
Yeah.
and it's well known because it's excellently done, produced, and performed. And so you've won that twice, which is really, that's The Moth is one of the top storytelling venues in the world. And so to say that you won this twice is definitely saying that you got some mad skills there. But then you've also conceived of,
Yeah, I
produced,
produce my own show. Well, I produce a couple
show.
storytelling
Yeah.
shows. One of them is called Shame on Sunday, and I did this first one about 5 years ago, maybe even longer, way pre-pandemic. We did it in Hollywood, and at the time, we had, even Moses Storm came in and did, he was one of the storytellers. This is before he grew up and became the Conan person he is. But we've had lots of cool comedians come in, and the big idea is that I'm a very shame-based person, and so I was like, what can I do to have a show that sort of like embraces this shame? And so the big idea is that I come up, I tell a funny shame-based story. And to be clear, this is not like an emotionally triggering story. It's not like this emotionally triggering thing happened to me. It's not one of those shows. It's more embarrassment type of things. It's like I was on a date and I really had to go to the bathroom, and there was no bathroom around at the time. So it's like those kind of things. Or I admitted to my friend when I was 13 that I masturbated, and then he said, "Nobody does that. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that." And I was horrified for years, So it's like all of these things that people can relate to. And so I will tell a story, and then I have different people come up and they share their shame-based stories. And I have the audience participate. And the audience will say, share your shame, share your shame, share your shame. And they're not doing it in a hazing way, they're doing it in a supportive way. And so then the next storyteller will come up and they'll share their shame, like when I stole from my mom's best friend because I wanted the jewelry that she had, and then she found it. It's like all of these kind of shameful, embarrassing stories, but then they get through the end of it, and then I have the people walk off stage, and I have the audience members, they have spray bottles, and they're not like water pistols, they're like misting, like you water plants. And so I have the people, they walk through this gauntlet after they've shared their shame, and everybody sprays the water on them. That's like spraying off the shame.
Oh,
And
cool.
and so yeah, each of the stories is about 8 minutes long. And so we're gonna do one of these in Long Beach at this place called Sacred Roots Holistic something.
I'm going to put it up right now. There's so people who are interested.
Yeah,
That's
holistic healing.
Sunday, November 20th, in the afternoon to the evening, 4:30 to 6:30,
Yeah,
down in Long Beach.
and it should be fun. There's a woman, Jocelyn. She's the owner and super cool. And so we're gonna have people come, and a couple people will put their name in the hat, so there can just be random people with a good shame-based, embarrassing story. And then I'll have a couple of people lined up who I know are gonna go, and we kind of mix it up. And just get ready. If you tell your story, you're gonna get misted with it, and you're gonna have the shame kind of taken off.
So it's interesting. So you have some random people can come up, but so each one you have somebody and who comes up, and you have guests that come up, and each one goes about 8 minutes or so.
Each one it's like a lineup, of storytellers. So I'll tell a shame-based story, then I'll bring the next person up. They tell their 8 minute. They get the mist, the share your shame, share your shame. And so by the end of it, I've just found that people laugh a lot, it's not stand-up comedy, it is storytelling. So it's not like you have to be in a firing squad and telling a joke a minute. But these stories are funny because, again, they're true and they make you cringe. And people come up afterwards and they're like, I felt so good after watching that, because it does something to sort of take the shame off.
Yeah.
So it's called Shame on Sunday. We do them on Sundays usually.
Pain plus time equals comedy, right? So
yeah.
Well, that's cool. So, and finally, we're if we go any longer, we're going to have to split this into 2 episodes.
Okay.
I think
we don't want to
it's been
torture
fantastic.
the audience.
What's that?
I said we don't want to go too long. So yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, we want people to actually watch it or listen to it. But what I'd like to, one last thing I'd like to cover is but you teach storytelling and writing.
I do.
And so tell us about that.
So I'm going to be teaching at that Sacred Roots. We can get the info, which we can put up at some point. I'm going to be teaching a workshop there about a month after my Shame on Sunday. The Shame on Sunday is going to be
so in December, about like around right before Christmas.
Yes. Oh, that's right. So that'll be. Oh, did I say the Shame on Sunday is December?
You said about a month after the Shame
exactly.
on Sunday.
So that will be that'll be then, and then I'm also going to be doing stuff which I'll put on the Instagram, where I'm going to be doing it online as well. But that one at Sacred Roots is going to be in person. And I'm also going to be teaching workshops in Mexico, in case you're down in Baja. I'll put something about that as well. But I'm going to be teaching a storytelling, course down there in the next month. And we also do a show, I don't have it here, but in Mexico, called Wine and Tell, where people tell stories and they get a different wine each month and a different theme for the stories. So there's a bunch of stuff. I'll put it up there on Instagram.
Mike splits his time
never
between.
Mike. It's always Michael.
Michael, I'm sorry. Well, I call you Hard Dial.
I know, it's so crazy, is it? I know that.
But David resonates with me. So I mean, other people resonate with Mike, whatever. But anyhow, Michael spends his time between Baja, Mexico, and Los Angeles, California. So between the two, he's either in Mexico or so he does a lot of stuff down there. There's like an expat community down in Baja where it's like there's a Walmart and a Home Depot and all that stuff in that area. It's pretty funny. It's like little America in Mexico.
I try to stay far away from there and be
I stay far away from that stuff. Yeah, but well, anyway, it's like apparently I said to myself I wasn't going to talk about this because then you like have a whole bunch of people coming down there. They want to keep it, preserve it, whatever. Anyway, I think this is a good place to call it quits. I had a wonderful time talking with you. We'll have all the pertinent information down in whatever show notes. If you enjoyed this show, follow us. We're on all the majors. We're on all the major socials and YouTube. My website is jaigopalyoga.com. All that information will be down below in whatever place that you see it. This podcast is on all major podcast platforms. So please subscribe if you like it so you can find out about updates. And apparently on YouTube, there's a notification bell, which will give you notifications when we have new stuff.
Give it a thumbs up, right?
Yeah, give a thumbs up, like stuff. Just give us some love, baby, because we're all the people of love here. So
thank you, Gopal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we passed our mutual interview here. I was telling Hardial, David, Michael, that I want to do a regular thing about the arts, about writing, about that, and as a part of this One Flow podcast, because the One Flow, as you'll see it develop, we have different sort of segments. It's like a whole channel. So this one's called Conversations. We'll have one about money called Money Camp, and then we'll have to come up with a clever name for the one for the arts and stuff like that. But thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Satnam.
Satnam.